So many of us have been really connecting with ourselves and connecting with the earth around this time. So it's such a perfect opportunity for you to share all of your wisdom and all of your beauty with us. I'm deeply honored to call you a friend. You've been here in the home, we've cooked together, we've eaten together, we've shared some beautiful moments, and I'm really happy to share you with the community and tell everybody a little bit more about what you're doing and the way that her tribe really uses fasting. It's such an important way for us to understand that fasting isn't just a physical thing, but it's a spiritual thing as well. And so I'm excited to have Cheryl today. I met Cheryl a few years ago at Aniwa, and then she came to stay at my house with another dear sister, Gladys, and we've had some wonderful conversations and shared some beautiful meals together. And I really believe in the work that she does with nonviolent communication. And I believe that our thoughts are really like the seeds of our reality. What we put out and think in our mind is the way that we communicate out in the world. Cheryl's done some beautiful work at Standing Rock. She's a water protector. And if you just want to watch the video, the silent march that she did, every single time I watch it, it brings goosebumps to my body and tears to my eyes about the power of how we can speak in this feminine way, this soft way, this caring way to ourselves and to one another. So with that being said, I'm going to bring Cheryl in. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you and everything that you're doing.
The message that I have is really simple. And it's a message of love. It's a message of strength. It's a message of unity. It's a message of self-care. At this time of COVID-19, self-care should be at the top of our minds, because we cannot do the work that needs to be done. We cannot share our messages, our magic, our skills, our songs, our ceremonies. We cannot do any of that unless we're well. So I'm really honored to be here today with all of you to share what little I know, to be in communication with the collective here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much. And it is such a blessing to have you here. We had a beautiful conversation with Paola. She spoke a little bit about the work that you did when you prepared everybody for the silent march, and how you really helped at the beginning to do this warrior training of like how to be provoked and how to stay grounded in your center, so that no matter what comes to you, you can deal with it with grace and with strength. So it was really beautiful. She spoke about that.
I'm really glad that she remembered. I'm really glad that that training stuck with her, because that's what we all need to hang on to, is what we were teaching that day. And believe me, it was cold. It was really bitter. And I was amazed at how many people walked with us despite the cold. There were hundreds. And so I was very inspired by them. And my calling has always led me to understand that the answer is the people. And I was there, and I was praying so hard. It was my second camp. The first spiritual camp was on my reservation with my people. We were fighting Keystone XL pipeline. And this was a couple of years before Sacred Stone and Standing Rock started. And we had our camp, and we had our prayers, and we were protecting our aquifer and our grandchildren in one prayer. And it was totally different. Our outreach was different, because we were in the middle of a cornfield, in the middle of nowhere. And yet we were able to show what prayer looked like and what resistance looks like from an Indigenous point of view. to protect that pipeline. So it was there that I learned a lot. That's when I really connected to the water. Since we were camped in the middle of nowhere, we had to drive several miles just to get water when we did run out, and to get supplies into the camp. And one of the things that inspired me to this day that I'll never forget is my grandson. We had our daughter-in-law had come to the camp. We had been there for probably 6 weeks, and her cupboards were there. So we took what money we had. Thankful there was a donation that came in, and we had money to go shopping for food. And it was me and my son were pushing our cart. We bought her everything she needed, 2 carts full of food, and we're pushing them out of the store. And in a blink, like a lightning flash, I saw my grandson hanging by his hand from the car, outside the car. And I thought it was real. So I jumped, pushed my cart forward in response to the image I had just seen. My son didn't move at all, like he didn't see anything. And I looked at him, and I looked back at the car, and everything was normal. My son was in his cart. My daughter-in-law was putting groceries in the trunk, and everything was normal. The sun was shining, the breeze was hitting me on my face, and I said, "Oh my goodness!" I didn't realize what that was. And then within about 3 seconds, I seen her put we were almost to the car, put the last bag into the trunk from her cart, and he stood up to reach out for his mom. You know how children do, because he wasn't quite 2 years old. And he stood up, and the motion of him standing up in that cart pushed the cart away, and he went flying out backwards out of the cart. But he reached out for the car. His hands were up in the air just as she slammed the trunk. So he was dangling from the trunk by his hand. That's what I had seen. So I immediately ran over to pick him up. She ran around the car to push the button for the trunk to come open. And when I looked at his hand, his fingers were bent. They were, going this way, sideways. They were going sideways. And I immediately took him to the car, opened the door, and I sat down, and I held him in my arms on his back with his head down. And the only thing that we had in the car was a jug of water. So I grabbed the jug of water, and I started pouring him like this, and I was praying. And I had his hand extended straight out and lower than the rest of his body, and I was like, please, please. And he was just a baby, so he wasn't quite 2, so I had him in my arms and in my lap, and I had his hand extended, and I was praying, please, please, heal his hand. And I watched as the weight of the water pouring on his hands literally straightened out his fingers. And so I took a cloth and I wrapped it, I bound his hand shut. And then we jumped in the car. We were going to go to the emergency room, which is, an hour away from where we were at. And we had just spent all our money down to the last penny. And the only thing we had was change. So, and I knew I needed to get ice on there. So we went to the McDonald's and we bought an ice cream cone, the change we had, and a cup of ice water. And we stuck his hand inside that cup of ice water. And we gave him the ice cream cone. So, because he was screaming, children scream when they're in pain, to focus on the ice cream cone. And we started driving. To the hospital, which was probably longer than an hour away, but we were on the way. And I kept praying. I just kept saying, Creator, heal my grandson Sam, please, please heal him. And then about when he finished his ice cream cone, he came up and he took his hand out of the water. His mom had his hand in the water. He took his hand out of the water. And he wasn't crying anymore. And I said, grandson, show me your hand. And he showed me his hand. And there wasn't a mark, a bump, a scrape, or a bruise on his hand, on either one of the 2 fingers that were bent and broken and bruised, scraped. And I was like in shock. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that water had had fixed his 2 fingers. And so from that moment on, and even from the time that I initiated that prayer, it was of love. It was of love. And from that point on, I said, for the rest of my life, every single day, I won't forget this lesson. I will always, always revere water. I will learn as much as I can about water. I will talk with nothing but love and for the hopes of all healing for all people. Because I was given and I was shown something that to me was a miracle. Other people might claim that didn't happen, but I was there. My family was there, and we saw his hand heal. We saw it. So I know the power of water. I know the power of our prayers, and I know that love is the most essential ingredient that we need, that we really need, because that's, I believe, the combination of all those is what healed my son's hand. It was a teaching that I will never forget, and it grounded me, and it claimed me. So I'm not alone, and we were never alone. We will never be as long as we drink water, and as long as we walk upon this earth. Everything around us, I know, is alive, and I know is communicating with us. We just don't all have the skills to understand the language and the messages that the plants and the animals are giving us. Not collectively yet. Individually, there are people out there who know those languages, who can feel those messages. But that was my message. It was the first of many messages I've received after giving myself to water. So I am a water protector for many reasons. But that day was the day that water claimed me. And I've been a protector ever since, on every level you can imagine. So that's what water is. So when we cleanse ourselves of everything and remember that this here can be healed with not only water, but with our prayers, with our intentions, then we should be revering this right here, along with nature, along with water, and along with prayer. So fasting is one way to do that. So I'm really glad, again, to be here to share that story with you, because all of this is connected. All of us are connected here today for a reason.
Thank you so much. Like you were speaking to something that I'm really fascinated about, and that's the way that we communicate to things, the way that we communicate to the elements, to water, to our own bodies. And, you know, like we're 70% water and we live on a mostly watery planet. And, you know, how many times have we in our own minds, like, been upset because it's raining, or we've spilt water and we've put a bad intention out there around it being rainy or around there being water. And it's like, want to talk a little bit about our communication directly into water. I would like for you to speak a little bit about how you like converse and how you put your energy towards the elements and water.
I do really simple things, really simple routines that I picked up from people who have a relationship with water. They were willing to share those routines. The easiest routine and the quickest way to start talking to water is every morning when you get up. The first thing I do is drink water. The very first thing I do is literally touch the faucet. There's a woman who sings to the water. And she makes these water faucet chains, and they're just beads with a little note attached to them, and that says, revere the water, and it has a message. But you take the little clippy and the little string of, and you wrap it around your faucet. So every day, and you can do this with your own, you can create your own little bracelet for your water faucet and put it right around your faucet. So as soon as you wake up, you see the little reminder that I need to say thank you to water. I need to ask this water to bless me. And the other one is when the moon is out. We have the new moon ceremony. But what I do is I take a vessel, and we should, all of us should have a vessel that we can carry water in, because this is our physical vessel. But we should have a symbolic and a contemporary vessel. And I'll show you what mine looks like. Not just a second. This is my vessel, and it's always full of water. What I do is in the morning, I drink from this vessel, and I ask for the water in it to heal me. But before I drink it the night before, at the end of the day when it's empty, I fill it back up. I fill it back up, and I ask the water in it to think of me, to think about the things that I need, and to give me those things that I need, not the things I want, but the things that I need, because we spend a lot of our day thinking about the things that we want. And sometimes we forget the things that we actually really need to find that peace. Me, I believe that everybody deserves peace, especially our enemies. And those who want peace but don't know it. They might be looking for other things that sound like peace, that sound like it will give them happiness. But what everybody needs and deserves is peace. I always pray for peace. And I always pray for those things that I need, because unconsciously, I may not know what those words are, but the water does. The water, she speaks the language to plants that we don't. The water, she speaks the language of animals that we don't. She has her own special language. But when we're in need, she hears us. So this is my vessel. And I have a place over here where I keep it every day.
It's amazing the simple things that seem so small but are actually so great. And I know you have a great connection with animals as well. We've spoken a lot about your horses and the work that you do with your horses. I would love to know a little bit more about that, because I know that many people would love to support you on the call, and I would love to hear a little bit about the work that you've been doing with your herd as well.
The work I do with horses is also healing work, because it comes from a really tragic story. And I think all of the most profound changes that we experience start with tragedy. One of the things that happened to my people in the late 1800s is that when the gold was discovered in the Black Hills, we were taken off those lands and restricted from ever using those lands, and we were put on prison camps, and we needed permission to leave these prison camps. And so we were separated from our horses at that time. Parts of our homelands were designated as these prison camps, and we were forced, depending upon what tribe you were from, to go to these certain areas. Today, those areas are still here. They're called reservations. And there was a declaration that said that if you didn't return to those lands, then you would be killed. There were a lot of people who were killed because they weren't on a designated land base at a certain given time. This story that was told to me about the horses, there was this, because horses to us are just like our own children. They carried us. They were a gift to us from the Creator. Anyway, so this man came with he was discovered. They found his location, and he came in with his Tioshbae, which is our nuclear family. He came in. Everything was recorded. You know, how many dogs they had, how many horses they had, how many children they had. And so they were sorted out. and the horses were taken into a slaughterhouse. And this elderly man was asked, why would you choose living out there in the wilderness during this really harsh blizzard, endangered the lives of your family here? He said, how could you ask me to give up the lives of my children? How could you ask me to walk them to their death? And he was talking about his horses when they were part of our family. So this man told him, how could you expect me to come in here knowing that you're going to kill my family? And he meant his horses. I will never forget that story. And so a lot of our herd was saved. They were saved by these people who didn't want to see them slaughtered either. Well, that was in the late 1800s. I have descendants of those herds that were saved. So I call them traditional tribal police, and they're very different. So I have a group, small herd, and I use those for healing because horses, they can read us. They can read us. We can't hide anything from them. So if we have a pain, if we have an illness, if we have a worry, we're stressed, if we have tension, if we have any of that, they're there to take that from us, to comfort us, to heal us, if we let them. So that's what I do. I take people to these horses. I allow them to be free. I don't halter them. I don't harness them. I don't break them. I allow them their freedom. So their instincts remain intact. It's very important because those same instincts that allow them to communicate with the landscape and the plants and the other animals, those are also the same instincts that allow them to heal us and to be a comfort for us.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. And it shows us how when we keep this direct communication, when we keep our intuition, we can really start to become part of the whole. And those horses, feels like those horses really teach us by being able to have their wild ways. Maybe some people know about the sun dance here, and maybe some people don't. And a lot of people in the West, we look at fasting as a physical thing, as a physical way for us to cleanse our bodies, cleanse our organs, and we're almost like we're controlling or dominating our body to perform a certain way. But I'm curious to know about the spiritual aspects of fasting, and whatever you want to share with us, I'm happy if you teach a few people about the Sundance.
Sundance is a really, really old ceremony, and it's been it was held in secret for a long time. Living the Sundance means that you've got to take care of your relatives. You have to, and to do it in a spiritual manner, a physical manner, it means that you have to really be in tune with yourself and in control, so that you can be available. You have to be intentfully available every day, 24/7. The fasting part is, if you understand what I'm gonna use the word communion, because communion is a spiritual connection. You can learn to do that through meditation, but fasting is something that you can do individually. It's a very personal means of establishing that that connection to everything out here, the spiritualness of our world. So fasting does one thing. It allows you to have all your bodily needs tugging at you. You're going to want to feel hungry. All of your body sensations are going to be heightened. And it takes a really spiritual effort and a focus to to say, I'm going to elevate myself above those needs to a spiritual need. Now, we fast for 4 days during the Sundance. And a long time ago, it was a lot harsher than it is now. But the intent of that fast was for our body to become weakened to a point where it no longer functions as it normally does, because we haven't given it what it normally needs to function. And that releases our senses, all of them. We literally become unconscious physically. And so at that point, by the time that we've waken up, we've regained our consciousness, our body resets, then we have a new set of instructions. So this set of instructions is buried here. It's our ability to link and communicate with other spiritual entities out there. And because everything here is alive, and most everything has a spirit. But we're so ingrained to just hang on to what we know are on these senses. We depend solely on these senses that we were given, that's connected to this body. It's hard for us to communicate on another level. But fasting allows you to do that. But when we fast, we literally can elevate ourselves to another level.
So well put. I really feel like that's going to give everybody a lot of power and strength to walk through the next 24 hours, and hopefully to encourage them to feel into the strength beyond their physical. And so with that,